Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's Substack Live at the Sustainable Media Center. My name is Emma Lemke, and I serve as the Director of Gen Z Advocacy for SMC. And I'm so honored and happy and enjoyed to be joined in conversation today with SMC Gen Z board member and Success Academy High School senior at the Academy of the Liberal Arts in Harlem, Rosiah Palmer. Rosiah has been a member of Gen Z's board for many years, and during that period has interviewed fellow SMC board members, advocated for healthier digital ecosystems, and overall just enriched the board with her thought leadership in the area of youth empowerment. So, Rosiah, we are so lucky to be in conversation with you today. So, thank you for jumping
Thank
on.
you.
So, now for today's conversation, I really want to lean into your expertise as a young person, which is exactly that. It's being a young person in the digital age with all of its complexities, beauties, and complications, especially when it comes to interacting with tech and AI. So I think that there is an enormous amount of insight to gain from talking to outstanding advocates like yourself about the state of affairs of Gen Z's relationship with tech. So let's jump in. So now start us off and give listeners a little bit of information about you. Feel free to give a longer introduction and walk us through how you inevitably found your way onto the Gen Z board at SMC.
Okay. So hello, my name is Rosiah Palmer. I am currently a senior attending the High School of the Liberal Arts at Success Academy in Harlem, and I am a very big advocate for youth mental health. I actually met Steve at one of the meetings I was at. I was at a panelist meeting where I was called up to talk about my views on social media's effects on teen mental health, and that is where he approached me and he was like, "Hey, I really love your thoughts and your views on these things, and let's have a conversation." And he ended up allowing me to join the SMC Gen Z board, which is amazing, such an amazing opportunity. And I was able to also interview Esther, which is another person that's also on the SMC board.
Amazing. And, talk listeners through your experience observing and using specifically like AI in high school. Like, how in general has technology complicated your life and your peers' lives as students?
I think that when it first came out, it was a lot less accessible. I think the really big one was like ChatGPT, and then you'd go onto that, and that's really one of the few spaces where you would find AI. But it's become so integrated into a lot of our like daily usage, like Google. If you look up a Google search, it automatically gives you an AI overview. ChatGPT, obviously, everybody still uses
Mhm.
that, and there are so many other platforms out there that use AI or are just mainly AI focused.
Mhm.
Um, so it tends to be a lot more accessible, for
Mhm.
one. And then for two, I think, especially with students in New York City, just students everywhere, honestly, um, there's a higher usage of AI because of the increased workload on students. So students tend to use AI a lot more, which I personally don't agree with. I don't like using AI for my work.
Mhm.
Um, but I do see where students are coming from when they go and they use AI. And like they're really confused or they want to get the work done. So they decide to go and use AI. But I think that it's definitely bringing us back a little bit because we're not learning to break down things critically or think as critically because of the increased dependence on AI.
Mhm. So, kind of going and digging a little bit deeper into that, because I completely agree with you. What are your thoughts on how Gen Z is engaging with and using AI? Like, how, because you talked about how some people have a greater reliance on it. You talked about how you personally don't. Like, personally, why don't you? Is it that you are afraid of the cognitive, like, offloading piece of it all? Like, talk us through that.
I think for me, personally, I'm thinking about the ethics
Hmm.
of it, whether it comes to like whether it relates to the water usage and the fact that we will no longer have a fresh water source in a couple of years because of our continued use of AI and data centers, or even the fact that like the use of AI is increasing so exponentially that people in the workforce are using it for their jobs, or the fact that children who are in kindergarten, elementary school, middle school are using AI to do their work and now they're not meeting their critical periods. I think that it just doesn't make sense. The biggest part of being human and learning is to struggle. You
Yeah.
have to struggle through to learn to gain the expertise that you need to work in whatever field you need to work in, especially if you're working in a high stress field, whether it be anything in the medical field, law, politics,
Mhm.
those fields, like, also engineering, any math, STEM,
Yeah.
poli sci, even writing. All these fields include a degree of critical thinking, and if people aren't able to critically think because of their constant dependence on AI, we lose our value as humans. That's why we see a lot of jobs being lost to AI because of an increase in technology.
Mhm.
And I think that that is just a bit weird. It feels a bit off. I don't personally like it. And I think
Mhm.
that one of the greatest assets that I will have as I get older is my ability to critically think because
Mhm.
of my lack of use of AI.
100%. And now let's kind of flip that. And so we've talked a lot about AI. Let's talk about social media. So
Yes.
specifically as it relates, like obviously AI is involved with like your algorithm and the way that you interact and experience social media on the day to day.
Mhm.
But talk us through, how are you seeing people in the classroom and as your peers use social media? What do you think that like other generations don't understand about Gen Z's usage of social media? Because, one thing that SMC is doing right now is we're tracking lawsuits. We're tracking
Mhm.
places in which people are advocating and pushing back for greater accountability and responsibility. And
Right.
one of the lawsuits we're looking at is a school district that's suing these tech companies,
Mhm.
saying basically school has become much more difficult and young people are distracted and they're emotionally tired. Like talk us through like your experience at school and if maybe you carry some of those sentiments of the addictive nature of social media.
So I actually deleted TikTok and Snapchat a very long time ago, but
Mhm.
I'm a an avid user of Instagram. So I love Instagram, and I think that it can be highly addictive.
Yeah.
Even its CEO Mark Zuckerberg came out and said that he's made the algorithms, sorry, addictive, so that people use it more. There's also a higher dependence on um, social media for people to make revenue,
Mhm.
to um, just provide for themselves. There's a lot of influencers, social media
Yeah.
creators, and people that's main source of income is reaching out to people on the platforms and hopefully getting buyers from those platforms. I think as well that social media has become like a really big part of the like social culture in itself,
Mhm.
from teens to adults to once again little kids. I
Yeah.
think that there's like a really big skip in our generation.
Mhm.
Um, One thing I was talking to one of my friends about was like childhood shows. Like you grew up on childhood shows like Monster High
Yeah.
and My Little Pony and so many other shows. Um, and those things taught you lessons, right? You looked forward to those things. Those were like the things you look forward to the most in
Yeah.
childhood. But now we see a skip over that now with the children of this generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, where they're trying to act like teenagers or adults
Yeah.
because that's what they see the most, or they are watching brain rot TikToks, brain
Mhm.
rot Instagram reels, and that's what's influencing their minds. Um, so once again, an increase in social media usage is decreasing our critical thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that I find super interesting oftentimes, and I'm 23, so I'm older than you, but it's even like within Gen Z and within Gen X plus groups, like there's a huge misconception about like tech usage, AI usage, and the ways in which we interact with our devices. So,
Mhm.
what do you think people in older generations don't understand about you and your peers' usage of social media and AI?
I think, hmm, for me personally, I think that it's not necessarily the biggest issue is not necessarily how Gen X perceives our
Hmm.
use of AI and all these things. I think it's their susceptibility to AI.
Hmm.
Um, you'll
Yeah.
see a lot of older people believing AI memes or AI videos, watching AI cat videos and thinking that this is real, or
Hmm.
getting AI scam likely calls and giving out their information because they believe it's real because they're not used to AI. One
Yeah.
thing that we as a younger generation have is our ability to separate what is real and what is fake because of our growth on social media, because of our growth in the technology boomish, like the technology boom era. That's something that the older generations don't have, and because of that, they're getting scammed a lot more. They're getting cheated a lot more. They're getting manipulated a lot more,
Mhm.
and quite frankly, lied to a lot more. So I think the biggest thing is like making sure that we can educate those who are in the older generations on how to separate what is real and what is fake, and then
Mhm.
giving them guidelines as to how to make sure that they keep their information safe, keep themselves safe. And honestly, just I think another big thing is like having people from the older generation teach people from the younger
Yeah.
generation how to not rely on AI. A lot
Yeah.
of people from the older generation weren't given access to AI, didn't have as much technology. They relied on books, textbooks, all these other things, these physical things to make sure that they could learn so that they could
Mhm.
gain critical thinking, like strategies.
Mhm.
And I think that should be passed back down to us as well.
I totally agree. I think that that's a super astute point. Like with so many other generations, like they had like these physical, like they, even in their memory, like physical memories that my mom will talk about, like the blue book and like textbooks and like typing out like her essays and stuff like that. And no, like we're not going to go back to an era where that's the case. Like nor should we necessarily. But I do think it's important to pass down that generational knowledge of like hard work, like soft skills, like emotional, like human, like EQs. Like it's important that we're really teaching what's important as we progress further and further into this age of AI, because that's what distinguishes between us and machines, is like our ability to like critically think and like have emotional reasoning and things like that. So I think that that's a really great point.
Yes, thank you.
So, my next question, I have two more for you. So, what excites you the most about Gen Z advocacy and empowerment in the tech space? Why do you think it's so important that we're having these conversations and doing this type of work?
I think that with the younger generation being the ones that are the most impacted by technology, advocacy from us causes more people to be accountable.
Yeah.
There's an increase in accountability for um, and addictiveness of
Mhm.
social media tech boomers and social media CEOs, such as Mark Zuckerberg, who's on trial currently for his addictive, very addictive websites and very addictive apps. It's very insane, honestly. The use of social media data being stolen, the use of other people's like artist technologies being stolen, not technologies, artist work being stolen to fuel AI. Um, I think that as more young people start to come out and advocate, more changes can be made. And I think another thing that Gen Z is really good at is putting their foot down. Um,
Amen. Yep.
they are very good at putting their foot down. When they want something done, it will get done. And if they have
Mhm.
to band together, they will do so to make sure that changes are made.
Oh, 100%. I always say like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like we are the scrappiest generations. Like if you want to look at some of the funniest people in the entire world, like go on Instagram and TikTok. Like there are some of the funniest creators who are like creatively cutting together bits and putting together like really funny memes and things like that. Like we're very creative. We're very interested in exploring the world and the ways in which we fit into that world. But I think that we're also very willing to share opinions.
Right.
So one thing that you said that I just wrote down that really caught my attention is you were emphasizing like, yeah, Mark Zuckerberg on trial and like the addictive nature of social media. Do you think that if you polled your high school class, do you think that the majority of the students in the class, if you said definitively, do you agree with this statement, yes or no, is social media addictive? What do you think the outcome would be? Like, do you think people agree that it is an addictive platform?
I think I think they would agree. I think that we have a very highly educated class of students in my
Mhm.
school. Everybody takes a good deal of pride in their education and the amount of time
Mhm.
that they put into themselves
Yeah.
to become educated. And I think that while we all use social media and we love it, we can also tell that it is extremely addictive. So
Yeah.
there are definitely negative sides and positive sides, and I think everybody is willing to see both of them.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I asked earlier, about like what are the misconceptions about like Gen Z and tech usage? Because I think oftentimes like one of the greatest misconceptions is that like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like we're all screenagers, right? Like we are these passive tech zombies and we have no understanding of the ways in which it impacts us or we impact it. which I think is just a complete, miscalculation and misunderstanding. Because to your point,
Agreed.
like I think if a lot of young people can take a step back and say this is like any issue in the world, it's not black and white. Like there are major issues that come with the addictive nature of social media and the content that's being pushed via the algorithm towards certain groups. It also can be an expressive outlet. So it's like you have to balance the two, and you have to hold people accountable, but also provide the space for people to express themselves and to talk and connect and explore the world. So the last question I have for you, if there's one piece of advice you'd give a young person about their tech usage, what is it and why? And then flipping that around, the second question is, what is one piece of advice you would give a Gen X plus individual and about how they perceive and support young people in their digital usage? So kind of a
I,
twofold.
I think that for people in the Gen Z and Gen Alpha generations, I think I would tell them to have a balance between their social media usage and things that they can do that is tangible.
Mhm,
So having hobbies like reading, biking, doing art, that's good, but also being able to have some sort of social media content or an ability to healthily to use Instagram,
mhm,
TikTok, or all these other social media platforms in a healthy way is also important, so that
mhm.
you don't get burnt out. Um, because screen burnout is a really big thing. You don't
Yeah.
get bored. Your mind doesn't get numb from mindlessly scrolling. Um,
Mhm,
and I think that's also another part of like growing up and adapting to the technology that we have in our generation. Being able
mhm.
to think critically, be human, but also just scroll if you want to.
Yeah,
Um, and then for those in the Gen X generations, I would tell them to ask their younger counterparts to educate them on how social media works so that they can figure out what is real, what is fake, and then also how to properly use the platforms.
absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Rosiah, for jumping on and sharing your knowledge. I think it's so affirming to hear your perspective on this because like I think so many people, especially with AI, like what you were saying, like are scared and frustrated that young people are kind of losing critical thinking abilities. But it's so nice to hear a young person say, no, what no. Like not all of us want to lose our ability to critically think. We just have to think more intentionally and critically about how we use AI. So super grateful for you and your leadership. And I want to just thank you again for being on. And we want to let everyone know, as always, we look forward to being in conversation again with you next week. And the SMC community, we're so grateful for you. So we are excited to tune in with you again in a week.
Thank you so much for having me, and I absolutely love this, and I cannot wait to continue to work with the Sustainable Media Board.